John Fredericks, America's Godzilla of Truth. He's popular and proficient in picking politics with prophetic precision. And now J. Fred's picking sports. Are y'all ready for this? All across the airwaves and streams of the John Fredericks Media Network, John, Jack, and Nate, three guys that are pretty wise when it comes to picking winners. Football, basketball, baseball, soccer, golf, UFC battles, you name it. When the game is on your mind and money's on the line, Godzilla Wins is your guide to picking winners. Before you make that play, hear what J. Fred has to say. Godzilla Wins on the John Fredericks Media Network.
Oh yeah, for entertainment purposes only.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Godzilla Wins Saturday Morning Picks Show. It is a lovely Saturday morning here, February 4th, 2024. I am here with senior editor for GodzillaWins.com, Nate Perry, and usually we'd be with my father, the Godzilla of Truth, but this week John Fredericks is out, so it'll be me and Nate doing the whole show. For the first hour, we're talking some hot topics here. We're going to talk a little bit about Caitlin Clark approaching the all-time NCAA scoring record, do some hockey talk with our man Dan Angel, college hoops picks, and then we're going to transition into a bunch of NFL. By the top of the hour, we'll be joined by Mitch Rogers, writer for Godzilla Wins. He's going to be breaking down the AFC and NFC championship games for us. Exciting weekend last weekend with those two games, maybe some results we didn't exactly expect, but here we are. Then we'll talk a little bit about how the Chiefs can win the Super Bowl and how the Niners can win the Super Bowl. No NFL to handicap this week. This will be the first time since September that we haven't had the ability to handicap a NFL game. I want to remind everybody that GodzillaWins.com and all its subsidiaries are for entertainment purposes only. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. That's 1-800-426-2537 in Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Michigan, Nebraska, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Call 800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelpline-ma.org in Massachusetts. Call 877-G-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-522-4700 in Kansas, New Hampshire, 888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut, 100-BETS-OFF in Iowa, or visit opgr.org in Oregon. I want to welcome in Dan Angel, senior writer for GodzillaWins.com, senior writer and editor for GodzillaWins.com, and Nate Perry, senior editor for GodzillaWins.com as well. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Show will be a little different without John. He brings a lot of energy so early in the morning. So he's always used to getting up early and bringing the heat. So always a little different when he's not on the show. Different, just a totally different energy. It's why he's one of the best when it comes to just getting on the radio, turning on the microphone, and just talking.
Getting people fired up.
Yeah.
That he does.
No one better than my father that I've ever met at just saying what comes to mind. So we'll miss him, and he'll be back next. He didn't even offer an explanation where he is. I haven't been able to get him on the phone for a while. This year will be a busy year for him. Of course, everybody who listens to the show probably knows he's involved in politics. So this being an election year, probably for Virginia as well as for the country, he'll be probably in and out all of 2024. Busy year for him as he does what he does best, which is follow politics all year long. But yeah, he didn't bother to explain why he wasn't coming on the show or where he is. I tried to call him.
He had mentioned the U.S. Virgin Islands as a destination. Maybe he's just abroad or whatever.
Yeah, sometimes he is abroad. Sometimes he'll hit me up on WhatsApp without letting me know. He'll be like, "Oh, I'm in." Some other country. And I'm like, oh, I had no idea you were out of the country. But, he's always on the go. So it's just kind of how he is. So we wish him the best of luck wherever he is. Maybe he's just sleeping in every once in a while. You might need a weekend off from the show. But we're happy to have both Nate and Dan here on the Godzilla Wins Pick Show. We have no NFL this week, so a lot of variety topics here. The NCAA tournament's heating up, but so in February, we're in February, but getting closer to some of the tournament play, we'll definitely be handicapping a lot of those tournaments. We'll spend like a whole hour on college basketball, and then when we get to the March Madness, it'll be 2 hours. So we're getting close to that, but we're still in the Super Bowl, kind of variety topics here. So what I'd like to start with is just what I find to be a fascinating story for anyone just following college hoops at all, which is that Caitlin Clark, who is Iowa's biggest star, point guard for the Iowa Hawkeyes on the women's side, is the number 2 team ranked right now on the women's side, is fast approaching the all-time scoring record for both the women's college basketball, just the NCAA record, but also Pete Maravich's record, which is just the all-time scoring record. Now, couple caveats on this. The women's record, I think everybody thinks she's going to break. There should be no reason why she doesn't. She averages 32.5 points a game. She's got 8 games left, and she's only like 140 points away from breaking the women's record. So that we expect her to do. Maravich's record has never been broken. And just to put a little context on Maravich's record, very different time playing basketball back then. First off, there was no shot clock, and there was no 3-point line. So the fact that he's held this record for so long just without those two contextually in the game is important. Other context, I think he played for 3. I think Maravich played for 3 years.
There was no freshman eligibility back then.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. Like you could on the one side, it's like, okay, well, you can play for 4 or 5 years and break it. Is that as impressive? But then also a lot of these guys who are just incredible scorers now, they leave after a year. So it's a record that if Clark breaks it, it'll be exciting and interesting, but it's contextually, it's so different from now that I kind of think the record, her just breaking the all-time women's scoring record, is one that I'm more interested in. I just don't know how to compare Maravich's record to Clark. The time in which they play were so different. I guess my question, and we'll start, with Dan, who does a lot of college hoops for us here, is just how impressed are we with Clark's ability to maybe break both records, one of which has not been broken in 50 years.
Well, there really is no comparing what Maravich did to anybody else, because as you said, it was a totally different time. The disadvantages that he played with compared to what exists now, like if he had played with a 3-point line, a shot clock, and had gotten that 4th year, there's a good chance he might have scored 5,000 points. So just what he did is in a class by itself. He averaged 44 points a game, which is just unheard of. That said, what Clark is doing is just fantastic. She is a fearless shooter, and watching her play is just a joy. She's fantastic for the game, and it's really nice seeing her put up numbers night after night. And she's doing it in a league where the Big Ten is pretty loaded in women's basketball. You've got teams like Indiana, Maryland, Ohio State, who are solid squads. Everybody knows that Caitlin Clark is getting the ball most of the time, and yet they still can't stop her. And she's just fantastic.
Yeah, she ran around for 35 points in her most recent game against Northwestern, and Northwestern said after the game that we ran her off the 3-point line and forgot she could drive to the hoop and score, which is one of the reasons that makes her so difficult as a scorer, is just the fact that, to be honest, if you watch her play basketball a lot, I think she's actually more comfortable driving to the rim and scoring than she is hitting those 3-point shots. She loves to penetrate. And so if you challenge her on the 3-point line, she's just going to score a different way. It is pretty impressive to watch. She's not just like a 3-point shooter. I think a lot of people see her, if they don't watch women's basketball a lot, they see her as just a 3-point shooter, because that's what you see in the highlights, those kind of Steph Curry step backs where she takes a shot from like 38 feet or whatever, just brings the ball up and fires it off and hits it. And those are incredible to watch. But if you run her off the 3-point line, you have to really contend with her down low. And she's also an incredible passer. So that, is another part of her game. I mean, she's going to make a really incredible impact in the WNBA. But, as of right now, yeah, Nate, I don't know how you feel about the Maravich thing. If it's just an impressive, I mean, the fact that nobody's got there, if nobody's got to 3, 6, 6, 7, and Clark might not. But if she does, if that's just impressive in her own right.
I mean, the Maravich thing is wild, and it's like one of those sports things that just they don't like those records don't get broken, right? It's like complete games records will never be broken from the early years of baseball when guys just went out there and just threw 9 all the time. Like it's just one of those things. It's just like it just doesn't feel like a really attainable record, and obviously the circumstances are way different because they did it in 3 years. I guess like what I keep thinking about with like Caitlin Clark is how do we view it? Like the scoring record's impressive, right? Like women's basketball is like a fun sport, but like I don't know if there was like a male college basketball player, I don't know if I'd be like, oh man, this is like crazy that they're breaking a scoring record, just because I think, God, if they've been in college for this long, like they're probably not going to be a very good pro. This is sort of the pinnacle of their career. So I keep thinking about this, like, is this like the Olympics? It's like watching someone in the Olympics, like a niche sport where like now, we're awed by Caitlin Clark, but this is really, we're just witnessing like the pinnacle of her career. And then after this, like nothing she does means much. Like, that's what I keep thinking about.
Well, so, and Dan, you may know more about this than I do. This is kind of your wheelhouse as far as sports knowledge. Antoine Davis, who plays in the G League now, I think he played for 5 years in college. I can't remember where, and I'm pretty sure he came within 3 points of breaking Maravich's record. And
Yes.
so like Nate is saying, he plays in the G League. So if you play for 5 years with the shot clock and the 3-point, and you're on a team where you can put up 30 or 40 points a game, then you're in a position where you can break that record. But the fact that even a G League player, hasn't done it is still pretty impressive on the Maravich side. I mean, I know it's a little different. Obviously, if some of these NBA guys, I mean, if Luka Doncic played 4 years in the NCAA, I'm sure he'd get to 5,000 points. So it's, it is a little weird. I don't, as far as the Clark thing, like, is this the pinnacle of her career? I don't think so. In women's basketball, it's not normal for them to come out after a year or two.
Mhm.
I actually don't even know the eligibility for the WNBA, but if you start to follow the WNBA draft class, it's really it's complicated and weird for lots of reasons. One is because a lot of the women play overseas, so sometimes they're playing like two leagues at once, which can mess with their eligibility for the draft. So sometimes that happens. Sometimes they get pregnant, which can mess up some of the draft class stuff as well. So I mean, I think just like Sabrina Ionescu, like I think she's going to make a huge impact in the WNBA. What is interesting is that and I wish James was here to talk about this. I should have had him on for this segment. Maybe we'll bring it up next hour or two. The WNBA is still, I don't think it's not like as popular as women's college hoops right now. And my interest is if Clark can take this electricity that she's shown in college, and if it translates to the WNBA, that's what I'm most interested in, because Iowa has filled eight away stadiums for women's college basketball, like sold out crowds for 8 away stadiums this Big Ten schedule or whatever. So there's something about Clark that is super electric. Angel Reese and LSU's Haley Von Leaf and stuff like that, they're electric too. South Carolina is always really good. We know that. But, even those UConn teams where they won like 150 games in a row, Like you would think that those would break all these attendance records and they would be just as exciting. And there's just something about Clark that everybody seems to really respond to. And I think it might just be the fact that she shoots daggers from like 40 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, it's also worth noting that, like right now she's making more money than she will in the WNBA unless something changes.
yeah.
Unless she brings like enough electricity to like, like really raise salary caps. Like she's making over $1 million a year. I think Angel Reese is making almost 2 or a little over 2 in NIL deals. The maximum salary for a WNBA player is $500,000 a year. That's absolute max. So they're already making 2 to 4 times as much money as they would as a max contract player in the WNBA. Like stay in college forever. Like why would you leave?
Right.
Yeah. Hell,
it's the only college athletics now where it's like it's almost better to just stay in school. Like just
I mean, I think the whole salary cap. Yeah, and our producer is saying that you have to be at least 22 to enter the draft. But I think the entire salary cap for the whole team for a WNBA franchise is 1.6 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. So somebody like
they're making a team's worth of money.
Yeah, and that's why they play overseas, because those salary caps don't exist in Europe. So like a WNBA player is going to make most of her money going over to Europe and playing in the WNBA's off season.
I mean, and someone like Clark will always have sponsorship deals. I mean, these guys, like they have such a huge following on their social media. Like they'll make more money. They won't make as much money probably as they can make from NIL, but I mean, Clark's gonna be in Subway commercials and stuff like that. So like she'll make a ton of money, but it's the draft stuff for the NBA, WNBA, or just free agency. It is bananas. If you just go into like a deep dive and read the reporters who report on this stuff right before the season starts in the summer, because of so much international play, like some of the best WNBA players on a team will just like opt out. Like they'll be like, oh, well, they're not playing on the team this year. It's really wild to follow how to build a WNBA team every year. The challenges are just like crazy. I mean, it's crazy to have to build any team, but there's just because there's so much more competition from the internationally, it's difficult to build a team in the same way that like I think we see that competition now in golf with LIV, where these guys are just defecting and going to LIV for all this money in the same way. I mean, you're not building a team there, but you're trying to keep your league interesting. And at the PGA level now, all the greatest golfers that we follow, the ones who everybody knows, are going to probably move over to a different league because there's more money in it. And I mean that if I'm a great athlete, like I'm just going wherever someone pays me. I don't care where it is. Other than maybe a couple very specific places, I'll probably just, if I got to play in Barcelona forever, then nothing wrong with that. Barcelona's kind of a cool city.
True, but then there are some situations where I think Lionel Messi comes to mind. He ended up in Miami when Saudi Arabia offered him more money because his wife said, "Hell no, we're not going to Saudi Arabia."
I think Saudi Arabia is probably one of the places where I would be like, let's just push the pause here.
When you're Lionel Messi, the money's been made.
Well, yes, yes, of course. That is a bad example in that front. Of course, you're right.
I mean, they did offer him like $1 billion. Or
but Ronaldo took the money, right?
Yeah, didn't Ronaldo take the money?
Ronaldo did take the money, yes.
There he is. Yeah.
Man, and that kind of stuff is crazy. And we always like talking a little bit. Like soccer is such a fun sport to talk about because the business side is so interesting. It's such a there's such a interest in the kind of the entire world has an interest in the sport, and all these different countries are trying to build up their soccer teams. So we should do more sort of just soccer business. That would be kind of
also
interesting.
Jack, you mentioned Antoine Davis. Interestingly enough, his college has not won a game since he left.
Yeah. Where did he go to school?
Detroit.
Okay, yeah. So I wasn't sure because I know he played for the G League there.
Yeah, and the Titans are currently rocking 0-23.
See, they missed the presence, the salty vet presence of Antoine Davis.
Missed the instant offense of Antoine Davis.
Yeah.
If Clark breaks Maravich's record, I think I'd be very happy and excited. If Antoine Davis had broken it, I might be like, okay, well, then it doesn't mean anything.
Right. Well, like averaging 28 points a game for 5 years is a lot different than averaging 43 for 3.
Right.
You know, like that's just monstrous.
What blows my mind is no shot clock. Like, I can't imagine watching basketball. If I was a basketball coach with no shot clock, we would score 16 points, and I'd be like, all right, just hold the ball forever. Like, no more scoring. And we'll just win the game 16-14. What's that?
Okay, Dean Smith.
Yeah, that's right.
The four corners.
I mean, sometimes defense is easier to coach, I think.
I mean, the ACC tournament in that era had an infamous 12-10 game between Duke and NC State.
I love that. See, that would be my basketball game right there. I'd be at practice.
Just held the ball.
Tactical.
I'd be at practice every day being like, you bums suck. You can't score. Don't shoot the ball. There's no shot clock, so this is what we're going to do. You just pass the ball around. We're going to be the greatest. We're going to be the most crisp passing team you've ever seen. We're just going to wheel this baby around over and over again. And once we get our perfect shot, every 4.5 minutes, we're going to hit that shot on the block. But otherwise, like, you're just holding the ball. Get the ball, pass it around, and then we'll win the game, and they can change the rules later. So that would be my guess. But look, one of the other things that change in the game here is healthycell.com. Healthycell.com can help you do just so many things. And one of the things my dad, if he were here, he likes to talk about all the time is Healthy Cell's REM sleep, which really helps with your ability to get that deep sleep, that deep REM sleep, which is so important for, pretty much anybody. It can be hard to get enough sleep and hard to get in that deep sleep where you really feel rested. A lot of times, I mean, I'm like a lot of us, we're up early. I got to get up pretty early for my job as well. A lot of times you don't get that third sort of REM sleep and you wake up groggy. It takes a while to get there. You're relying too much on caffeine or stuff like that. All of a sudden it's 10 o'clock and you're fading at your desk. So what I need everyone to do is just go to healthycell.com. Check out Healthy Cell. They've got all sorts of great products. One of the ones that we love so much here is REM sleep. Just keeps you fresh as a daisy, as my father likes to say in the morning. And look, the promo code Godzilla right now gets you 20% off. So this is an incredible deal for an incredible product. You go to healthycell.com, you put in the promo code Godzilla, you get 20% off. Just find REM sleep there, put in the promo code Godzilla, and you will not be disappointed. Okay, Dan, we're without John today, so Hockey Talk will be a little bit shorter because it's really mostly just you on the three of us who's locked into hockey here. My father adds an interesting perspective as someone who started following the game like 20 minutes ago. But as someone who's watched it a little bit longer, let's just give our listeners a little bit of hockey talk here, a little some of your NHL picks for the weekend, what you think you see in value this weekend for the NHL.
Well, so there's actually no NHL games this weekend because it's our weekend. So what I'm going to do instead is look at some of the long-term plays for some futures. So the bet that I really like is the Rangers at plus 1,000 to win the Stanley Cup. Like, I just think this team with Peter Laviolette behind the bench has all the ingredients needed to win a championship, and the value that you're getting them at plus 1,000 is pretty good compared to some of the other teams ahead of them. I think Boston and Florida are going to be on a collision course with each other. So the Rangers are only going to have to beat one of them because of the way that the Eastern Conference. And I'm not sold on either Edmonton or Colorado coming out of the West. So I think the Rangers hold plenty of value. If John were here, I know that he would be arguing for the Winnipeg Jets at plus 1,200. I mean, the Jets have a really good defense. I'm just a little bit concerned about their offense. If this was a couple years ago, I'd be right there with him. But Wheeler and Scheifele and Kyle Connor are starting to get older, and I wonder if that offense is going to hold up. And Connor Hellebuck has also had a history of coming up small in the playoffs. So I'm a little bit skittish at Winnipeg at plus 1,200. I'd probably look to go in another direction out of the West. Vancouver at plus 1,300, also not really doing it for me. I think that the Canucks are a little bit overinflated. I'd probably look to last year's champion and take the Golden Knights at plus 1,300. I think that Vegas just knows how to win in the postseason. And that's all that this franchise has ever known, because this was the team that memorably got Cup finals as an expansion team. And I think that they still have all the pieces in place from last year. I think that they'll be able to put a run together, and they're probably going to make a move or two around the deadline to bolster their chances of repeating. So I think Vegas holds a lot of value at plus 1,300.
I have no idea why John is obsessed with the Winnipeg Jets.
Because they keep winning for him.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the part of it. But I don't even know how he how he came upon this team. Like Pittsburgh, the Penguins make sense because he's there. But I can guarantee that most likely what happened is, I mean, I don't know this, so he can correct me next week if I'm wrong, but he doesn't go to like fancy bars and stuff. He goes to like Applebee's and Outback. Like he's always at Outback. And I can guarantee like what he was doing was like just sitting at the Outback bar, or like the bar at Whole Foods, which he just discovered that you can get drinks at Whole Foods. So I know he was just like at an Outback bar, like knocking back just like a triple vodka. And then Winnipeg was just on TV and he's just looking around being like, these guys play pretty well. This is like a pretty good hockey team right here. I think I'm going to place a couple bets on them. And I guess now they're winning for him. So, we'll see. But I have no idea where Winnipeg came from. That's not like, the New Jersey Devils. That makes sense. Everybody knows the Red Wings. But as someone who just started paying attention to hockey, the fact that he started hitting on Winnipeg makes me a little skeptical as to where he found out that they even had a team, considering he can't keep any of these Canadian teams like straight at all.
Right. I know
The geography of Canada is just non-existent in his brain.
What's that?
The geography of Canada is just non-existent. It's just
It's
just
Ottawa,
a blank area with
Ottawa, not to be confused with Calgary.
Yeah, Canada's like landmass wise just as big as America, and it's just a tabula rasa to him.
Yeah.
Like it's just a blank slate up there. Once you get up there, everything's 20 minutes away. So no.
Yeah, for John, it's either 20 minutes away or it's 7 hours by bus. That's what he thinks. He thinks everywhere is 7 hours by bus away from everywhere else.
Yeah, well,
and I think part of the reason, Jack, is when John got into betting hockey every night, the Jets were just on a tear. They won 10 out of 11 games in that stretch. They've lost 3 in a row right now because the offense just isn't doing its job at the moment. But the Jets, I mean, John doesn't play totals, but if you're the kind of person who does like to bet totals, the Jets have been a fantastic underplay for quite a while now. 10 of their last 11, the under has either won or pushed.
Oh,
So
that's huge.
Yeah,
that's
my kind of trend right there.
Yeah. But that's why I don't really like the Jets in the playoffs, because Connor Hellebuck, their goaltender, has not done the job in the postseason. I mean, he's a fantastic goalie in the regular season, but when the bright lights of the playoffs get on him, he's just not the same player, and Winnipeg doesn't have the offense to rescue him. So I think the Jets might be a team that gets bounced fairly early.
Dan, I don't know a lot about hockey, but I can tell you this because I do get into everybody gets in the Stanley Cup, I think, a little bit if you like sports. And one of the things that I always think is, man, if you don't have a good goalie, you're toast. Like these teams that just that have a goalie that struggles, like you're saying in the postseason, or just they just can't. They have trouble winning because you just can't. You run into these teams with amazing goalies, and so you have to be able to score. So and you have to be able to stop the puck from hitting the net, I think. So, look, let's move on to a little college basketball here. We can take our time. The next 2 topics after that are, sort of fluffy NFL topics. And we love talking about the NFL, but we have time for college hoops if you guys have some picks. So, Nate, I think we'll start with you here. I know you always got some college hoops picks. I know you've been throwing them in the Godzilla Wins daily picks. And if you're listening, look, y'all, go to GodzillaWins.com. You can find all the writing there. You can find Nate's writing on golf. You can find Dan's college hoops writing, his NHL writing. All sorts of picks, but you can also go up to the top there and you'll see daily picks. That Godzilla Wins daily picks site we'll just give you all of our staff picks for anything from college basketball, NFL, NHL, anything that we think is good value that we maybe didn't write up. It'll be right there on the site, so you can look at those picks as well, and you can look at it's built for transparency. So a lot of times with this stuff, with these people doing picks and stuff like that, you just don't know who's winning, if these guys are any good. And one of the reasons we wanted to build this out was to show a little bit of transparency here with some of our picks. But Nate, you're I would say hot and cold with college basketball. When you heat up, you really get hot. But I've also seen you go on some cold streaks. So hopefully you can heat up today. Tell us about some of your college hoops picks for Saturday, February 4th.
Yeah, so the big one I like is an early one. It's a noon Eastern start. I mean, it's a game that probably most people, if they turn it on, the first few games they'll probably be watching. The UConn St. John's game, this just feels like an upset. I mean, it's been sort of a wild year in college basketball. Anyways, it's been one of those seasons like many others that I can remember where it's, if you get ranked first, second, or third, you're almost just guaranteed to lose the next time you play a game, it feels like. And this feels like UConn's spot to drop a game. St. John's played pretty tough against them when they beat them last time, or when they lost to UConn earlier in the season. They lost by 4. The spread's now 3.5. It looks like UConn's going to be without their, one of their star players, Alex Caravan. He got hurt in his last game, tweaked his ankle. Looks like he's a game time decision, may play, but, certainly going to be limited. And Rick Pitino's done a lot of good things with St. John's, unbelievably at his age, that he can do anything like this. But, here we are, and we're talking about St. John's sort of on a, being able to upset the number 1 team in the country. I just don't think they're going to be overmatched. They rebound really well. They already played one tough game. When you look at the box score, it doesn't look like, St. John's maybe should have lost that game at all. So I'm willing to ride with St. John's as sort of my first, plant my flag on this play. That's sort of my favorite one of the day. Dan, did you have thoughts about that one? I mean, we should just probably go around the horn on this game because it's so big.
I mean, it is a big game. It's on, and this slate of games is so impressive that it's honestly not even in the top 3 of games today. But yeah, I think you nailed it. I mean, St. John's, very tough opponent at home, and yeah, Connecticut has an annoying habit of letting teams hang around a little too long. Occasionally, they'll get a game where they just blast somebody like they did to Xavier. But earlier in the week, I picked Providence to cover against them, and the Friars came through because Connecticut just lets teams hang around. And against St. John's, you can't really do that. So yeah, I think the Red Storm plus the small number makes a lot of sense here.
Yeah, I mean the bookmakers seem to agree with both of y'all in this, just in the fact that the number 1 team in the country, and St. John's is not ranked. St. John's is only plus 130 on the money line. So if you're looking at a game like this, you're thinking, "Ooh, I kind of like St. John's. Maybe I'll take on the money line." Well, the value's not really there. I mean, I was expecting plus 225, plus 250, whatever, plus 185, plus 130 is a pretty small margin there for a big upset.
There's going to be a gazillion money line parlays with UConn on there that are going to
yeah, it's got to be right. And that's minus 155. But yeah, I mean, I think St. John's keeps it close. I do agree with Dan. I mean, I've watched UConn play this year, and I just think that they do let teams hang around. They're really good. I mean, they're very tough. Obviously, the number 1 seed, they're going to be the favorite to go all the way, along with a couple other really strong teams this year. But yeah, that plus 3. And Pitino loves these spots. Like, this is, even at his age, like, this is such a classic. Like, this would be such a classic Pitino upset, just because he's a big game coach. He gets his teams ready to play. He did such a great job at Iona, right? Last couple years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's coaching wilderness.
Yeah, that's right. And sometimes
the wilderness of New York City.
Yeah. That's right. So yeah, I mean, I think we all are in agreement here. Take the plus 3, and Dan's right. I mean, it doesn't even crack the top 3 of like some of the most exciting games this Saturday. So I love when that happens, when we have all these incredible games on Saturday. So go ahead, Nate, and talk about a few more if you want to.
I mean, at this point, I have a hard time. I mean, yeah, Duke, North Carolina is obviously a big game. I mean, the one that I think I'm most fired up for, just from the perspective of being a fan and being like a degenerate gambler, is probably like Houston, Kansas. This is just a huge game for Houston. I have a bet that I made, I think, the day after the national title game last year. So like in April, that was Houston 20-1 to win the whole thing. Houston's played excellent this season. They are not 20-1 anymore. And this is sort of just a huge game to really play someone elite and show that they have it after dropping a couple games when they started Big 12 play. So I'm looking at Houston to win this game. I mean, 1.5 point, favorites on the road in Kansas in fog. Like, that's not great. But I think that Houston will show up here. I mean, the defense has just been so elite all season. It's like just been ridiculous. So that's a big one for me. I also kind of like Texas to upset TCU in this game. I mean, it just looks like a bad spot for TCU here. They just broke into the rankings. This is the perfect spot for the Longhorns to knock them back out of the rankings. This is mostly just a defensive thing. Texas is a really good defensive rebounding team. TCU really needs to sort of crash the boards and force second chances for themselves and for their offense. I don't think they're going to have the opportunity to do that. So that's sort of the big three that I've been looking at are Texas, Houston, and then St. John's are sort of my three best picks.
Big Houston guy with that 21 future. That's a nice
dude. I can't even think rationally about them. I'm just like, I just hope they win every time. I'm like John with the Titans. I'm like Houston minus 1.5. I'd lay 5.
Yeah, that's always always John's go-to is well, what's the spread? 3? Play it up to 19. Like, all right,
yeah, just
get a little.
It's not going to be close.
Yeah, right. Titans minus 17. You can get some good value there. Dan, what you got for us for college basketball today?
All right. Well, the first thing I'm going to look at is I got to take North Carolina against Duke. I think that Duke isn't all that strong away from home, and the Tar Heels just match up so well with this Blue Devil squad. I mean, North Carolina shoots the from well, does not defend it well. Duke is a great three-point shooting team, but Carolina defends the arc better than just about anybody. So I think Duke's biggest strength is going up against Carolina's big strength on defense, whereas Carolina's offense is going to be attacking Duke in the areas where the Blue Devils are not all that strong. So I think Carolina to cover the 4.5 in Chapel Hill makes a lot of sense here. A couple lesser known games that I like. Lafayette and Army. These teams just cannot score. They play incredibly slow paced. The first time they played each other, they combined to score 99. So under 120.5, I think that one looks pretty good for me.
We like that.
So another one that I like that is a little more well-known is Virginia Tech at Miami. He covers this one because Virginia Tech is built around getting to the free throw line. The Hokies lead the nation in free throw percentage. Miami is 5th best in the country at not sending teams to the free throw line, and the Hurricanes are outstanding at crashing the boards and putting home second chances. So if Virginia Tech's not getting to the free throw line and they're getting beaten up on the boards, they're not winning in Coral Gables. So Miami minus the 2.5 really. So another one that I like is I think Sacramento State is going to get held under its team total of 65.5 at Portland State. Portland State has played very well at home this year, other than one hiccup against Idaho State that I still can't figure out what happened. But Portland State's coming off a sweep of the Montana schools. Sacramento State comes in having lost 4 in a row, having failed to get to 67 points in 3 straight. I just don't think the Hornets do much on offense in this game. So I think that taking Sac State under the team total makes a lot of sense. And Tennessee and Kentucky, I think this is going to be points galore. I think both teams are really going to hit the gas in a back and forth game. So I'm going to take the over there.
Yeah, Tennessee loves to play fast. They're kind of fun to watch that way. I've got 2 picks for you. I'll start with the Miami-Virginia Tech game, which Dan mentioned here. On a side note, I for the spread, I do kind of like Miami as well. I think you get in 2.5 right now. I think you could probably play it up to 3.5. I think that spread is a little low, and I think you might see it start to go up. The closer we get to game time, the college hoops, these spreads move a lot. But I like the over in this game mostly. And this isn't, I wouldn't say this is like a great strategy for handicapping unders and over, but point totals. But also, as a caveat, I suck at point totals, so I don't even know if I'd listen to me. I'm much stronger on the spread than I am on point totals. I can't ever win a point total game, but I'm gonna keep trying. I like the over here, Virginia Tech, Miami. Neither team really defends the three very well. And Miami likes to shoot the three. They can really hit it. Virginia Tech, they shoot like 36% from three, which is not, I mean, it's respectable. I think they can still hit the three as well. The over's at like 151.5. I know that the pace of play determines the over under a little bit more, but I'm just going to say, okay, well, let's hit the over here. Let's hit the over button on this game. Maybe there's a lot of points, but I also like the spread there. Miami 2.5 is really nice. Last game I like on the schedule here is Florida going to Texas A&M. Mostly because I think the Gators are a little overvalued right now. Florida's ripped off 4 in a row, which is, I mean, they're a good team, but I don't know if they're that good in the SEC. And Texas A&M has been struggling a little bit. They just lost to Ole Miss, which is, Ole Miss is a good team. They lost at home. Texas A&M is a big physical team. I think they're a little undervalued right now. They're -2 for the game. They could be -3, -4, really. I think you get a lot of value there. They rebound the ball really well. They like to play off of the 3-point line on defense. Like to get teams off the 3-point line and force them into the paint to play with some of their physical, more physical 4s and 5s. So I kind of like the Aggies here -2. I think at some point Florida's going to end up just running out of stinker, just due to the fact that that's what happens in college basketball. It's very hard to maintain that level of success over and over and over again. And the Aggies are not playing up to their potential. At some point, they're going to get right. They're not going to keep losing at home at College Station all the time. I think the Ole Miss loss will be kind of a wake-up call for them. That was a big win for Ole Miss. First time Ole Miss basketball has ever won in College Station, which they're not like they play every year. The Aggies haven't been in the SEC that long, but even still, big win for Ole Miss. So I kind of think emotionally the Aggies are ready to pounce on somebody. I think you could probably play it up to 3 or 3.5 if you wanted to. I like the Aggies -2 there, and I like the over in the Miami Virginia Tech game, which should be a fun game. It's always fun watching Jim Laranaga's team in the ACC. Now, before we get to some of the NFL, one thing that I think a lot of people are wondering about is how me, Nate, and Dan just stay so focused, so locked in for all this time. I mean, Nate and I are here for about 2 hours, and we're so locked in. And one of the reasons we're locked in here is because of Beard Vet Coffee. We do not go anywhere without a little Beard Vet Coffee. This is some of the best coffee on the market. We love Sean and Kenny and all they do for us here at Godzilla Wins. They're two incredible guys, veterans who couldn't get a good cup of coffee when they were serving overseas, and so they came back and decided they would make some coffee here for us. Now you can go to beardvet.com. That's beardvet.com. Put in the promo code Godzilla. I'm going to get you 10% off. And if your order is over, I believe $50, although check that, you get free shipping as well. Now they got the K cups. That's those pods. They got whole bean if you want that. Or you can just buy the ground coffee like you do at the store. All sorts of different options, all incredible taste, nice bold flavor there. I drink coffee every day, and I do not go anywhere without Beard Vet. It's too good, I can't. Not only is it reasonable, Nate, and does it get there quickly? It's also incredible coffee. So you put in that promo code Godzilla, get you 10% off on beardvet.com. That's beardvet.com. We want to thank them as always for sponsoring us and working with us for such a long time. Been an early believer in Godzilla Wins, and we're happy to have them. Now, you're listening to the Godzilla Wins Saturday Pick Show. I believe it's about 8:45 here Eastern time. We are going to do some NFL for the rest of the show here, getting geared up for the Super Bowl. We're not going to make any picks right now. We still got a week for the Super Bowl. So we want to just do a couple topics, Nate and Dan. And then we'll get to, at the top of the hour, 10 o'clock Eastern, we'll get to some of the more, 9 o'clock Eastern, I'm sorry. We'll get to some of the more breakdowns here, but we'll save the picks for next week. So we'll see. Now, what I want to start with here is some quarterback carousel. We've been doing a lot of coaching carousel lately. We got some quarterbacks that should be moving around. The big one, I think, Nate, is Kirk Cousins, who may be playing for a different team next year. Then we also got Russell Wilson, who Sean Payton benched. Don't expect to see him in Denver next year. Baker Mayfield, hard to know exactly where he might go. I mean, if I was Tampa, I would sign him. I don't see why you wouldn't. He won a playoff game, got to the divisional round. I knew he threw that pick against Detroit. But, I mean, in a world where quarterback play is hard to find, I'm not sure if I was Tampa, I would just move on from Baker, who played pretty well for you. But I think we'll start with Kirk Cousins here. A lot of rumors maybe he's moving to Atlanta. Atlanta's definitely looking to upgrade at quarterback. Got a new coach. One of the things everybody's saying about Atlanta right now is they're maybe just one piece away. Got a lot of offensive weapons. Got a good defense. A coach that everybody's excited about. Is this a good fit, Nate, in Atlanta? Is this somewhere you think Kirk would end up, or are there some other spots, some other teams that might be looking to pursue him a little bit more aggressively?
I mean, I think Atlanta is going to be in the conversation for basically every quarterback available, just because they have such a, just a black hole at the position. So everyone that, is even remotely available, they're going to be, at least kicking the tires on. But for Kirk Cousins, I mean, he seems to like it in Minnesota. He said before he doesn't really care, about he's sort of done playing for the money. Like it seems like Minnesota has made their offer, or pretty public, and seems to be what they want to offer him is 2 years, $90 million, so $45 a year. He's making $35 now. I think he probably just resigns. I think that he's just probably not interested in packing his whole family up and moving again. I think he'll probably just stay in Minnesota. If they want him, I think he'll stay.
Dan, you agree with that, or you think he's on the move? I mean, he is one of the quarterbacks that teams are going to be looking at this year.
He is, but I think Nate has it right. I mean, why would you give up a situation where you're comfortable in Minnesota? I mean, you know the personnel that you're working with, the coaching staff, the playbook. Why would you go to a completely different location where you're going to have more pressure and not really a better situation? Because Atlanta has these expectations after the disastrous experiment with Ritter and Heineke of being just one piece away. If you go there and it's not an immediate fit, what have you really done? So, he's going to get a chance to get paid in Minnesota. He doesn't really need the money at this point, but he is in a pretty good situation in a fairly reasonable division. So why not just stick it out?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I think, where are you going to find another Justin Jefferson is my question. I mean, you're already
right. Yeah, I mean, that's a huge thing, right?
Right. Like you're already throwing to like the best wide receiver in the NFL. I mean, the Falcons have good pieces, and they hired the Rams quarterbacks coach to be their offensive coordinator. So, there's a McVay tree. I'm sure the offense will be schemed well, but you don't have Justin Jefferson. If I'm Kirk Cousins, $45 million a year to throw to the greatest wide receiver in the NFL, maybe, makes it easy, and I don't have to move. And we got to remember the Vikings were right there last year. I mean, I know 2 years ago we talked about, oh, they're just a lucky team, all those one possession wins or stuff like that. They got smoked in the playoffs, but still they can put together a 13-win season. I think they were
rolling this year before he got hurt.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. They were. So, most likely, if I'm him, I'm staying, but you never know. Now we'll talk for a minute because I do want to get to the Belichick stuff as well. So we'll just talk a little bit about Russell Wilson as well here, as far as landing spots go. Now, NFL.com has a lot of landing spots that maybe that's David Carr writing for NFL.com that maybe he could go to. We've got maybe the Steelers. I'm just going to list them, Nate. The Commanders, the Titans, the Bears, the Falcons, the Patriots. Is there a spot where Russell Wilson is perfect for? I mean, we don't expect him to play for Denver next year. Him and Sean Payton did not get along. I think Payton never wanted him as the quarterback and just waited until the perfect moment to basically send the message that he wasn't going to be in Denver for very long.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, initially Sean Payton got hired as sort of, to take over the reclamation project that seemed to be Russell Wilson. And then he realized that there was no, this building is condemned. He just wasn't willing to, rebuild anything on that foundation. So yeah, they're moving on. The team that I think, I think that, Chicago probably finds their quarterback of the future. I don't think they have any interest in Russell Wilson. They don't need to, right? The Patriots are so far away that it doesn't make any sense to spend that kind of money. Titans are so far away that it doesn't make sense to spend that kind of money. I think Atlanta makes the most sense for Russell Wilson. I mean, they don't really have where they're drafting. They don't have, just like a for sure, like turnkey starter. They have some money to spend. They have good skill position players. The offensive line is decent. Like Russell Wilson could do something with that team, I think. If the Broncos cut him, which it looks like they will, and they can sign him to a little bit cheaper contract, like I don't think that, Atlanta would be totally off base to ride with Russell Wilson for a little bit. Just given all the other pieces they've built in that offense, it seems to make a lot of sense for me. I think that's the best landing spot for him.
I mean, as a Falcons fan, I would take him. I mean, I'd take anyone over Desmond Ridder. Like, I would take Dan over Desmond Ridder. Like, Dan, you want to be the Falcons quarterback? I'll support you. Like, so
very bad idea.
Yeah, well, it can't get worse.
It can, trust me.
Desmond Ridder was so hard to watch. All he did was turn the ball over. He was just a mess. That was never going to work. He was never drafted to be the number one starter on that team anyway. But I think, I don't know. I'd like Russ would be fine in Atlanta. He's got so many pieces around him in a team like Atlanta that I don't think he'd have to do as much as in Denver, where there just weren't. I mean, there's a lot of offense, a lot of weapons here, but I don't know. Russ has had a rough couple of years, and I'm not sure. I don't know. I wonder about Pittsburgh. I mean, Pittsburgh was in the playoffs. They're also maybe a quarterback away from incredible play. I wonder if they might want to take a run at someone like Russ. I don't think they're super happy with Kenny Pickett. Nobody thinks Kenny Pickett's any good either. That's the only other team that I can kind of see wanting to spend the type of money to get Russ. Although you never know with the Commanders either. They make some interesting choices.
I mean, just how fired up are the Steelers though about offense? They just hired Arthur Smith as offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh. Like, are they really thinking like we're like one quarterback away? Like, they just hired a guy that should have been coaching football in the 70s, and they're like, oh, now's the time to revamp the offense with Russell Wilson. Like, I think they're fine with Kenny Pickett just handing it off. Like, if Arthur Smith is the coach, like I just don't know, or his offensive coordinator, like I just don't know, like how serious they are about upgrading their offense.
I mean, Arthur Smith was doing pretty well as the offensive coordinator before getting to Atlanta. He might just be one of those guys. He might be just one of those guys who's a great coordinator, but is not head coach material.
And there's a ton of those.
Yeah, and he'll be fine, I think. I mean, the Desmond Ridder thing was a mess for Atlanta, but before 2 years ago, before Patterson got hurt, they had the best run game in the country. They were super effective, super efficient in the run game. And then they drafted Bijan, and they were still good in the run game. They just couldn't get Ridder to stop turning the ball over. So he's a good coordinator. If you have a good game manager and a good running back, you can do worse than Arthur Smith. I don't think that's like a bad hire for the Steelers. I mean, their coordinator at the beginning of this year was like a mess. So now they have someone who is proven and can win games offensively, especially with a good defense. I mean, that's really kind of what you want. So we'll see. I think the Falcons are going to be looking to upgrade. So I don't know. If I'm the Falcons, I might put in a call to the Bears to see the availability of Justin Fields. That's kind of who I'm most interested in. I know that Fields has got his issues, but to watch him cut loose with all that talent on, Kyle Pitts and London, Bijan Robinson, Patterson, all those guys,
On some fast turf indoors.
Yeah. I feel like Justin Fields would be a lot of fun in a Falcons uniform. I don't know if the Bears are ready to move on from him, but I'd be willing to give him a chance in Atlanta for sure. So, two guys who have not been given a chance this year are Bill Belichick and Mike Vrabel. All the coaching spots are filled. Mike McDonald was hired as the Seahawks coach. It's the offensive coordinator for the Ravens, I believe, offensive coordinator, or is it defensive coordinator? I think Munkin is the offensive coordinator, and then there's someone else was hired. The last spot was filled. The name escapes me.
Dan Quinn.
Dan Quinn at Washington was hired. So, Dan, we'll start with you here. I mean, Belichick, greatest coach of all time, 15 wins away from the record for the most wins ever, overtaking Shula. Can't get a job. Does this mean anything, or does he have a job? Will he have a job next year?
It means that teams don't exactly like Bill Belichick, the general manager, which is it's a fair criticism at this point, because the Patriots are in the mess they're in because too many of Belichick's draft picks the last few years just have not panned out. I mean, New England should have, no, they never had a high pick because you're always picking near the end of each round, but there's no reason why you can't be stacking your roster with good depth guys in the second and third round. And the Patriots weren't getting those players. They were getting guys who would play a couple preseason games and then you'd never hear from them again. So if Belichick wants to break this record, he's going to have to accept working with a GM at this point. And I don't know if he's going to be willing to do that.
Yeah, Nate, is he capable? I mean, because the two big reasons why they say it didn't work out in Atlanta and he didn't get a lot of other calls was that, one, he's not willing to give up the whole roster control. And two, his cronyism, for lack of a better term, with his coordinator hires. The Matt Patricia thing is going to come up every single time you talk about Bill Belichick. The fact that he gave that guy the offensive coordinator job is just atrocious, considering he is a defensive coordinator. And so I don't know. I mean, is Belichick willing to give up the roster control and eat a little humble pie? Or is he willing to do you think he might just say screw it and retire?
I don't think he says screw it and retire. I think that somebody next season will be desperate enough to give him roster control. Is kind of what I think. I mean, that's just how the league is. Somebody will be terrible next year and they'll say screw it. We'll just give it to Bill and see if he can do anything with this team. I think somebody will do that. But yeah, I mean, the cronyism thing is real. It's because when you're hiring Belichick, you're hiring Matt Patricia to do something weird. You're probably hiring Bill O'Brien to sit in a room somewhere and watch film. You're hiring Josh McDaniels to, coach up quarterbacks. You're hiring all these people that are just
all his sons.
Yeah, they're just all these NFL retreads that sort of got bounced out of head coaching, and now the only job they can find is with Bill Belichick. They just come back home, So I don't know. I find it just it's strange. I'm more surprised that Vrabel didn't find a job than Belichick. I think that everyone, people really saw clearly the last couple seasons what Belichick was capable of without Tom Brady, and it wasn't much. It was a pretty good defense and just a disastrous offense and a roster that had no talent and drafts that got guys that, drafts that yielded guys that never signed, a second contract with the team. So many guys just playing out rookie contracts and leaving, and then they, would get cheap free agents. So they were just a mess. So I think that everyone knows what the roster building looks like now. Even with Tom Brady, that was a problematic thing sometimes. So
yeah, but listening to John, I mean, I'm not as surprised that Vrabel doesn't have a job, because to just listen to him describe how terrible the Titans were last year and how it seemed how poorly coached they were with all the penalties and the problems on special teams. I guess I'm not shocked. If I'm the Cowboys, I'd probably put in a call and see if he wants to be the DC. There's no more head coaching jobs. If he wants to just sit out a year, fine. But if I'm Vrabel, it'd be a pretty plush job just being the defensive coordinator for the greatest defensive unit in the NFL. Now that Dan Quinn's gone, so that would be my first move if I'm Jerry Jones. Why not get Vrabel to be your DC? And then you've got a guy who could step in as the Cowboys coach in a year as well. If it doesn't work out with Mike McCarthy, which I know Jerry Jones doesn't think that way. He likes to hold on to his coaches, but he also likes to promote from within. And he's not like a splashy coaching hire kind of guy. I wouldn't say Mike McCarthy was a splashy hire. Jason Garrett definitely wasn't. So I don't know. I would be, if I'm the Cowboys, I would be thinking maybe Vrabel for the DC, but
I think that's very reasonable. I mean, that was sort of the trajectory that Dan Quinn had. It was sort of like, he was kind of, had been cast out of Atlanta and was looking for a job. So I mean, that makes sense. That
yeah,
it'd be a similar type hire.
That's kind of where I would go. But the Bill thing, I think Dan's right. I mean, we'll just leave it at that. People want Bill Belichick, the defensive savant, not Bill Belichick, the general manager and draft disaster that he's been for like 10 years, not just 3. Brady saved that team a lot from some pretty mediocre talent those years. So, we'll see. I'm sure Belichick will get a job next year. Listen, you're listening to the Godzilla Win Saturday Pick Show here with Dan Angel and Nate Perry. We want to thank Dan for joining us for the first hour here. You can find him on X at DanAngel11 and Instagram at Dan.Angel11. Also his Substack, Angels Analytics. I think that's right, Dan. Is that wrong? I feel like I always get that messed up.
I always get it wrong every week. I'm too tired right now.
Find him on Substack. Get all his picks for the week. Find us writing on Godzilla Wins. We always want to thank Dan for joining us. Coming up next, we're breaking down the NFC AFC Championship games and the Super Bowl. Mitch Rogers is going to join us. It's going to be a lot of fun here to talk to him about the NFL. Do not turn the dial. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.
You're listening to Godzilla Wins on the John Fredericks Media Network. For a deeper dive without the jive, visit the website of winners, GodzillaWins.com. Let's get back to the show with the guys in the know, John, Jack, and Nate. It's Godzilla Wins on the John Fredericks Media Network.
You're listening to the Godzilla Win Saturday Pick Show here. We're here with senior editor Nate Perry, as always, joining us. And Mitch Rogers, writer, Pittsburgh Steelers beat writer for us, NFL columnist and analyst, and newly the Pittsburgh Penguins beat writer for us. So coming up here pretty soon, we'll get some Penguins picks from Mitch, maybe a little college hoops here during March Madness. Definitely everybody's going to be all hands on deck for March Madness when it comes to writing those picks. Always a fun time. So we got that coming up. We want to thank Mitch and Nate for joining us for this first hour. Now, before we get to the NFL breakdown here in the Super Bowl, we want to talk about Mitch's favorite sponsor. That's MyPillow. Now, listen, you go to mypillow.com. You just get the products. I can't even explain to you how incredible these products are. First of all, you got the pillow, obviously flagship product from MyPillow, just the name brand there, just what the whole company's named after is the pillow. So I mean, if you're interested in pillows, and Lord knows we all love pillows, nobody here sleeps on a t-shirt. Everybody's got pillows. So listen, you go to mypillow.com, put in that promo code FUN, you get a lot of pillows. I mean, there's so many pillows on that website. I couldn't tell you how many pillows, and you get 80% off on mypillow.com with that promo code FUN, up to 80% off. But listen, they don't just have pillows. And pillows, listen, do they make a good Valentine's Day gift? No, probably not. But can you purchase them for Valentine's Day? Absolutely. Everybody needs them. And then there's towels. You got washcloths. You got hand towels. I love the towels. I love the just the regular towel. You get the shower on, what you call those towels, shower towels, I guess, beach towels, whatever those towels are. Love those. Really soft, really nice, really dry wicking, a lot of wicking technology in those towels, probably in the pillows too. And then the slippers. Look, it got really cold a while ago here in Mississippi. We're not used to that. Had to bust out the MyPillow slippers, super comfortable. Walk around in those all the time. Promo code FUN get you 80% off on all these products. I mean, you just can't go wrong. Mitch knows this. Mitch loves MyPillow just as much as we do here. So promo code FUN. Mitch loves it so much that in one of his articles, he he like referenced My Pillow. I was like, Mitch, it just
it got edited out.
I put it in there. I think because it wasn't in there.
I think on the first run, and then it got edited out. But it's all right. It's all right. The
Well,
socks are great. I got the socks.
Yeah, I'll if I edit it out, it was a mistake. So keep throwing it in there, and I'll put it back because we love no. There's no bit better company man than Mitch Rogers for us right now. If you need something when it comes to the company, he's there for you. So he's company man, Mitch. Look, we're gonna talk a little NFL here. Glad to have both of you on the show. James couldn't join us this morning, so it'll just be the three of us, and we're just gonna run. We're just going to run through the NFL and the Super Bowl. I mean, big week here for us. I want to start with the AFC Championship, just our reactions. I mean, this is the one game I think that everybody was more, I don't know, interested in, surprised at, whatever. A lot of stuff to talk about the NFC as well. But first thing you got to do is go to GodzillaWins.com if you want your AFC Championship reaction and read Peter Kribels. He's our Ravens beat reporter. Read his new piece, which is called How the Kansas City Chiefs Ruined My Life. That's up on the website as well. He does a good job breaking down all of the Ravens' blunders. As a Ravens fan, he says he is used to this type of loss, to basically play your worst game in the most important spot. That's basically what he told me over text. He's like, the thing about being a Ravens fan is you have to be prepared for them to play their worst game in the most important spot. And that's exactly what happened here. The questions about Lamar are real, I think. When you compare him to – you can't even compare him to Mahomes. But even if you compare him to Josh Allen, Josh Allen's – the playoff games, they've been really good, even though he's lost a bunch of them to Mahomes. If Mahomes was in the NFC, maybe Josh is in 3 Super Bowls. He just keeps running into the Chiefs. He had that 500-yard game, the overtime game. He's been incredible. Lamar has not. He has considerably underperformed in the playoffs. His passer rating goes down. His yardage goes down. The advanced analytics go down. But that's not the whole story for this Ravens team, I don't think. The penalties were a mess. We all respect John Harbaugh. Even Mitch, the Steelers fan, I'm sure he respects John Harbaugh. And to see these just bonehead penalties, these personal fouls, that made no sense. The Zay Flowers fumble, I know people are up in arms about that. I don't know. The guy's trying to reach for the end zone. The ball gets punched out. That happens. I'm not as worried. I mean, Zay did not have a good day for other reasons, but I'm not sure I would blame the fumble on him. I mean, you see that a lot, especially from receivers. Running backs are so much better with the ball, with holding onto the ball in those moments. Wide receivers, they jump for the end zone. They're trying to get the nose across. It gets punched out. I think that's pretty normal. But, Nate, we'll start with you here. I guess I'm just looking for your general reaction here. I mean, is this for legacy purposes? I mean, are we starting to think about Lamar as someone who just can't get it done in the playoffs?
I mean, it's just what we've seen all playoffs, right? It's guys that are great in the regular season, and then they've never showed up. They show up small, as Dan said earlier, last segment, in the playoffs. Dak Prescott does it, And I think Lamar's just that kind of guy. It just doesn't seem, we see it all the time now where there are guys that just elevate in the playoffs, Patrick Mahomes. And then we see guys that just get there and they just look flat. And I think Lamar's just one of those guys that just looks flat. I mean, he looked confused the entire game. I mean, Spagnuolo just absolutely just dominated him in terms of calls. The receivers couldn't get open early. They made Lamar hang onto the ball for way too long. For some reason, they just refused to run it, and they didn't run it very effectively. When they did try it, the whole thing just looked like a mess offensively. And I'm not sure it's all Lamar, but a lot of it is. I mean, he just needs to be better at adjusting, and that's sort of been the knock, I think, for a lot of his career was that, there were times where it just looked like the game plan just kind of got away from him and that he wasn't capable of sort of adjusting on the fly. And this certainly kind of looked like that. When he was adjusting, it didn't look like he was, checking into the right plays, and he wasn't doing his sort of best to get guys, in position to be successful. Mitch, did you have sort of a big takeaway from the game?
Yeah, I mean, it was I was very, very confused about the offensive coordinator's approach to the game with Todd Monken. I mean, he did such a great job, coming in this season, really making Lamar a complete quarterback for the regular season.
Yeah.
And in this game, I know they went down early, and that may have changed the approach of it. And the Kansas City defense is stout against the run. I mean, that's kind of they're stout against the run, but that's kind of their weakness. They're great with the pass rush, but running backs only getting to carry the ball 6 times in the game. It was
That's
baffling
crazy
to me. And
that's crazy. I mean, that was their team. Run the ball.
I don't get it. I know when they were down 10-0, you may scrap it a little bit, but Lamar, the biggest takeaways I had with my own 2 eyes, with before reading articles, and was his inability, or just he wouldn't take the check down. I mean, he had receivers wide open for the easy 3 to 5, get the yak, let's go. But instead, there was a play in the second quarter. It was 3rd and 4, and they threw like a deep bomb to Zay Flowers, and he had people wide open. And Harbaugh all week preached about having to maintain time of possession and maintain the ball, and they didn't practice it in any way. Yeah, Lamar seemed to always be going for the home run, didn't seem to set his feet, seemed like the moment was slightly too big. And that is, it's tough. I mean, we are facing the Patriots 2.0 with the Chiefs. I mean, we are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're going to see Hall of Fame quarterbacks not win a lot of championships because you have Mahomes in there, the Ben Roethlisberger, the Drew Breeses, the fringe guys that were out there. I'm blanking on
Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning missed in Chargers quarterback. Philip Rivers.
Philip Rivers.
So you're starting to see that there, but yeah, that baffled me. The Zay Flowers fumble. I mean, that you could hear every quarterback that's ever played. What they have, like an old thing. I forget what they're saying is, if it's don't extend your arms unless it's a sure thing. But then they got the ball. I mean, he taunted. They got it all right back to within 3 yards, and they still screwed it up there. Yeah, I think the moment was too big for them. Not for the Chiefs, man. I tell you what, we can talk about the Ravens' performance, but the Chiefs have put up a masterclass in the playoffs. Now, I don't know if they've done the old NBA thing, lull everybody, we don't really play until the playoffs start thing. I don't quite believe that. No, I think you get rid of receivers that can't catch a ball and then get on Instagram and blow your spot up, right before the game. But the Chiefs have been amazing. I mean, from the start of it, from just the chippiness. I mean, like them or not, kicking the field goal kickers, getting in the battle before the game. But at one point, Kelsey was 11 for 11, 110 yards. It was like a Christian Laettner stat line, Duke, Kentucky from back in the day. It was like 10 for 10, 100 yards. It was simply fantastic. And Mahomes did what he needed to do, and the Ravens never cut into the lead. So it was a 10-point lead the whole game, so they didn't really need to do anything except for that awesome outburst of offense that they did at the beginning where they threw the touchdown to Kelsey. They were a masterclass, and the Chiefs are going to be tough out for the Niners as well. So hats off to the Chiefs, but the Ravens, they blundered it. 2-time MVP, and he can't sniff a Super Bowl. I mean, it's a tough, and I talked about it last week. Harbaugh, the narrative with Harbaugh not winning in the playoffs in the last decade is pretty ripe, and it's real, and they got to do something about it. But you got the Mahomes thing, and it's going to be tough for the Ravens to get back. It's always tough to get back to the championship game. So they're going to regret not being more well prepared and not running the ball. Like, that's back to my first point. Yeah. Why didn't they run the ball more? I just don't get it.
Yeah, with the Chiefs, like when you're playing the Chiefs, especially when you're at home, you have to control the possession. You just can't keep giving the ball back to Mahomes. He's going to score, and they score early. The Ravens defense did not look as prepared for the game plan that they did against Houston. They really wrecked Houston. They couldn't find an answer for Kelsey, and I mean Kelsey's Kelsey. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer as well. So it's hard to see exactly where the Ravens go from here. If it is just everybody keeps running into the Chiefs, and this is we're watching greatness. Maybe we're watching someone, if not as good as Brady, just right there with him. Certainly a guy who wins all the time. What the Chiefs did, they won 2 tough games on the road against 2 teams that everybody thought were Super Bowl contenders, the Bills and the Ravens. But when you're the Ravens, you can't, first of all, you can't have those kind of penalties. Those are just stupid. You're in a championship game. I mean, that's stuff like in the regular season, we'd be rolling our eyes, a team that wins 5 games. Definitely not in the playoffs. But yeah, you got to run the ball a little bit more. You got to use Lamar's legs a little bit more. And you got to really press the Chiefs to do some. The thing with Spags is like he's an incredible defensive coordinator, but he relies on the blitz. And if you force him out of his comfort zone, then it's easier to score on the Chiefs. But if you play into that hand, like passing the ball a ton and not being able to keep, where the Chris Joneses of the world can just focus on rushing the passer, then it just makes it hard. And then, of course, the other thing with Spags is like you have to do those checkdowns like Mitch is saying, because he just sends guys constantly. So the midfield is like open. I mean, the deep ball, it's harder to throw the deep ball when you got 3 guys running full speed at you. But you should be able to check down and get some production out of some of those guys. They got 2 incredible tight ends. They got a good running back. But I don't know. I mean, Joe Flacco, that was a long time ago, and that defense was a legendary defense. So to the questions about Harbaugh, I think are real. Now, I mean, his regular season success is unmatched. I mean, he builds an incredible culture, a great team. He's an amazing just sort of operator, a lot like Tomlin and some of these coaches who've just been doing this forever, Andy Reid. But you have to be able to win the big one. And at some point, when you're at home, I mean, you have to be able to win these games. So disappointing for the Ravens, not surprising. And I think you're right. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is going to end up shutting out a lot of these guys. I don't think that it's, I don't know if Justin Herbert and Jared Goff are the same as Ben Roethlisberger and Peyton Manning. Of course, they're not. But, Lamar, Josh, a couple of these guys, yeah. I mean, and we want to see them all win Super Bowls. So as a fan, it can be like, man, I mean, it's pretty amazing to watch Mahomes just do this year after year.
I mean, poor Mason Rudolph. He's never going to have a chance.
Yeah, I know.
He's just never going to.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll give hats off to the Ravens defense. And this is why it's still just baffles me that they didn't just nickel and dime their way back into the game. The Ravens defense was amazing after that initial onslaught, and they kept the game close. And it just feels like when you have Lamar, you have so many options. And the option in this game should have been ball control, run the ball a little bit, let him have some play action. And like you said, Spags blitzes, and therefore you're going to have a tight end or an H-back, someone wide open. But their defense played well. I mean, they're going to have the Ravens, and again, with Harbaugh, it's not like you're on the hot seat like with Tomlin, but it's just hard. It's hard to win in the playoffs. And when you're there, you have to take advantage of it. I know we're going to get to the Dan Campbell stuff, but Dan Campbell's comment about it's going to be twice as hard to get back to the championship next year is so true. And you're a fan of your franchises. Like when you get there, you think you'll be back, and the Steelers were there in 16, haven't sniffed it since. So it stinks for your franchise, especially when you have the MVP. I mean, this feels like the Green Bay Packers with Rodgers, right? When they didn't win enough Super Bowls when they could have. And Rodgers, another one that's, got into the Brady era and didn't get as many.
Yeah.
So I feel bad. You feel bad for them, but the Chiefs, man.
Yeah. I mean, so what's funny about the Rodgers, the Mannings, both Mannings, and Drew Brees, they do have a Super Bowl. So other than Stafford, it's like, and Brady, it's just been Mahomes. So,
that's true.
So, I mean, some of these guys at some point, they got to break through. Even Eli and Peyton found a way to break through and get a Super Bowl. Drew Brees as well. And Rodgers got one.
And it's worth noting, for the Ravens, they've had this problem for a long time, which is they're sort of just like bereft of like talent that's not Lamar Jackson on offense. like real like playmaking talent. Zay Flowers is good. Isaiah Likely was like a fun story, but they just don't have like a game breaking like talent that's not Lamar Jackson. And now that they've signed him to the giant contract, they might not have one for the rest of Lamar Jackson's career in Baltimore. And that's just what happens. Like that's what happened to Aaron Rodgers when he signed his big thing. They just didn't have any talent for him to throw to, and it makes a big difference. So, and it made a big difference before Lamar signed this huge, huge contract. So I just don't know I just don't know how much room there is for the Ravens offense to even grow outside of, just hoping that Lamar continues to perform at an MVP sort of level that elevates everyone else.
Right. And that's
going to have that much help.
That's a great point because that's exactly what the Chiefs are doing right now. Since Mahomes' $1 billion contract, they lose Tyreek Hill. He still wins a championship this season. I mean, this is the most down the Chiefs are probably going to look for the next 5 or 6 years, and they're still going to the Super Bowl. So, Lamar and everybody, you can't always, not everybody has a Mahomes to be able to do that. And but Andy Reid's a genius in that regard as well. Structuring, and it took a whole season. It took till the playoffs for it to work, and now it's starting to work. So, yeah, it's tough when you sign that quarterback. You can't all be Seattle, with Russell Wilson on a rookie deal and then go to a couple Super Bowls, and which is ideal, but it's tough to do. Yeah. Brock Purdy, making $600,000.
Yeah, but I mean, Brock Purdy's plays behind an incredible defense, and and so did Russell Wilson in Seattle. I don't know. I mean, the Chiefs have a good defense, but it's not the first thing we think about with the Chiefs. With the Ravens, we should be thinking about their defense maybe as just as good as their offense. I mean, they, like Mitch said, their defense has been really incredible this season. So it was tough to watch them lose, but hats off to Mahomes. Let's get to the NFC game here, which I really want to spend some time with. I mean, this was the game I think that everybody has more questions just about game management and some other stuff. The Campbell's Lions get out to an amazing start. We think, okay, well, here we go. Like this is, I mean, Detroit Lions are going to go to the Super Bowl. Like this is their time. Finally, we get someone that's not San Francisco or Kansas City. This will be fun. And I think it's 27-3, something like that at the half. I can't remember. As a Falcons fan, 28-3 is always burned in my brain, so I never know what the score is. But I do know that as a Falcons fan, I was watching that thinking, well, this isn't over, and it wasn't. And not only that, I mean, they got the doors blown off them in the second half. It wasn't even close. Everybody questioning Campbell on the fourth down when he goes for it. Should have kicked a field goal. I'll give my thoughts on that before we move on. I think Mitch was. It's important to bring up the point about Campbell saying we might not ever get back here. That's true. Not everybody is the Astros. Not everybody is the Chiefs or the Patriots of old. I mean, for real, like it's so hard to get back to this stuff. To have that continued dominance it's weird that we have some teams right now that do it, but it's not normal. And the Lions, an organization that is used to losing, it is going to be hard for them to get back. I mean, that is true. Now, the fourth down, the play where fourth and short, Campbell's been doing that all year long. He goes for it. He's very aggressive. A lot of people say he should have kicked a field goal. I'm not sure I agree with that for a couple of reasons. One, it's not his identity. You have to, if you're going to do the analytics thing and you're going to go for it in the situation, you have to do it every time or it doesn't work. That's how statistics works. You can't pick your spots. You just have to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to, the analytics say that I'm going to do this successfully more often than not. So that means I have to do it every time it comes up or it doesn't work. So there's that argument, which I kind of like. The Lions have been very successful on fourth and short all year long. There's no reason why they couldn't have done that. And they didn't lose. I mean, they lost by 3, but not really. They were down by 10 and they got a garbage touchdown at the end. Like the Niners were never, if they were down by 3 with the ball back, it would not have looked the same. It just wouldn't have. Or if they were down by, 7, where they had to score a touchdown to tie, which is kind of what everybody said. Oh, if they kicked that field goal, it's like, yeah, but I mean, everybody knows when you're down by 10 and there's a minute and a half left, you can just go down and score a touchdown. I mean, that happens. Yeah. Like, what do the Niners care if they score a touchdown? They're just going to get the ball back and kneel. So I'm not as convinced that these 3 points were that pivotal. But Nate, we'll start with you. I mean, should Campbell have just kick the field goal, take the points on the road, get up by 3 scores, keep the momentum, or do you just go for it and, marry yourself to the analytics?
I think marry yourself to the analytics. I mean, it was such a huge part of their identity, and it was such a huge part of their success coming into it. I mean, the worst thing you can do, I think, is sort of change what got you there. You know what I mean? They were good because they were aggressive, because they felt like they could be aggressive. That was just the mindset of their offense, and the analytics favored him going for it. If you just look at just a pure number by on that first decision in the third quarter when he went for it, it was 0.3%. In the second, when they were down 3 in the fourth quarter, they favored going for it by 0.2%. So, I mean, it was close. But I think that's just what they did. And, that first one in the third quarter when they could have gone up 17 again, if they kicked the field goal, was people aren't remembering that their kicker kind of sucks. Like, I think he was 48% from field goals longer than 45 yards. Like on the season. So like, that's not a guarantee. It's not like everyone makes it sound like a 46-yard field goal is just guaranteed just free points in a playoff game. And that's just not
on the road.
On the road. Like, that's just not real. Like, the idea that it's like, oh, he took points off the board by not kicking a pretty long field goal is stupid. Like, there was no guarantee there. So I don't mind going for it. I don't mind being aggressive. It's something that they talk about it in college basketball a lot. They don't talk about it in the NFL as much, just because I think this, the style of play is so much different. But in college basketball, teams that do well in the tournament and sort of single elimination type scenarios, teams that pull upsets, often what you have to do when you're playing a team with superior talent, which San Francisco is you have to increase the variance. You have to play more aggressively. You have to gamble more, because you have to hope that maybe something like weird will happen. If you can just make the game as strange as possible and just be as aggressive and weird as possible, maybe something will crack. But you're never just going to, like, one-on-one, like, roster-wise, like, Detroit is not as good as the Niners. They're not as well coached. The offense isn't as good. The defense isn't as good. They're just not as good of a team. They just don't have it. So I think that Dan Campbell correctly realized that, like, his team wasn't as good, and that if he was going to win the game, he had to keep playing aggressively and he had to keep gambling. So
the Niners,
the
Niners are used to coming back. I mean, like, they don't mind playing from behind. They have played from behind a lot this year and come back and won. That's not a situation that makes them nervous. Shanahan can scheme his way out of it. He's actually, I think, better.
He's better when he's played from behind.
Yeah, than he is when he's playing from the lead with the Falcons. And you're right about the variance thing. I mean, Fairleigh Dickinson upsets Purdue because they shoot 60% from 3 or whatever. Right. During that 16-1 upset. I'm not sure Purdue did anything really wrong other than just the variance was too much for them to overcome statistically. Same thing here. But I don't know, Mitch, like, if you're just sitting on the couch, like, you're not thinking about analytics, you're not thinking about how the kicker can miss a 46-yard field goal. I think you're thinking, man, just at least try to take the 3 and get up 3 scores.
Yeah, I don't think Dan Campbell was in the analytics game with those 2 decisions. I think he was caught up in his feels and emotion. You're watching from the first time that way, you should go for that one. The first time, but you're watching your lead dwindle away, and you're seeing it happen, and that's an emotional decision to go for it there to try to stop the bleeding. The last one, I don't care. I have a tattoo that says, "What would Bill Cowher do?" He was 101-1 when he had a 10-point lead. You're down 10. It's an equation. You need 10 points. Not kicking here's why I disagree with that decision completely, wholeheartedly. You get the first down. Say you get the first down. You still need 25 yards to get the touchdown, and you're bleeding clock. So kick the field goal. Just kick the field goal there, get your team within 7. Then that garbage touchdown we're talking about that doesn't mean anything ties the game. Like, that's where I don't get it. And I know what got you here, but what's going to not get you to the Super Bowl is not getting 10 points with 5 minutes left in the game. And so I didn't like that decision. But I love Dan Campbell, and I love the way that he took it and faced the media straight up and said, this is what got me here. And they should have made the play. I mean, that was an easy play. They should have. That last one should have. I mean, it should have been complete. But it was. And you guys are right. You have to give your best shot, and they did in the first half. I mean, they went all out. You watch Ben Johnson,
except when they kicked the field goal at the end of the second quarter.
Yeah.
4th and 2 on the 2-yard line. Like, that was one where it's like, man, if you're going to go for it, like, this is the dagger moment, and they kicked the field goal.
Yeah, and you're right. When you 27-3, For Falcons fans, when you've got Dan Quinn's name on Arthur, it's a Falcons week in news, and then it's all of a sudden 27-3 score. I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, you had this feeling but yeah, the fourth down, I mean, that's tough. The second one, I hated it as a fan watching it, but it is what got them there, right? And you kick the field goal, and then the 49ers put it into extra gear and probably score too. So who knows how it all plays out. I mean, so, I'm agreeing with you. He's thinking there's going to be more points by San Francisco as well, potentially, if they do score. So it's a tough decision. And the analytics part of it, it's fun. It makes it fun for us guys that sit back and do stats and stuff. It's definitely a crazier game than when I was a kid. I mean, my God. I mean, if it was 4th and 1 past the 50, the Steelers were punting every single time, right? Back in the 90s. So it's more fun. But to your point, I'll shut up, Jack. You're right. You have to keep going for it to make it work. You can't just pick your spots. So he stayed true to form. And he's sitting on the sideline.
Do you really have a Bill Cowher tattoo?
No. It'd be awesome.
Like, I mean,
right next to the Wu-Tang tattoo. Like,
yeah, I mean, with Steelers fans, you just never know. I mean, I was like, well, I think he's joking, but Steelers fans, they would go in there and be like, all right, WWBD right there on the shoulder.
Right.
He was 101-1 with a 10-point lead.
10-point lead in the second half. 101-1.
Oh my God!
Yeah, it was nuts. And the one was against the Falcons. The tie. That's where Plaxico Burress fell on the 1-yard line.
Oh right, yeah. Plaxico. There you go. There's an interesting name from about 15 years ago.
Hey, don't put a gun in your sweatpants.
Yeah, that's right. That's crazy. I mean, sometimes you hear those stats. People forget Bill Cowher was like just an incredible coach. I mean, obviously, people consider Mike Tomlin such a stalwart, but God, Cowher was in Pittsburgh forever too. They've only had how many coaches have the Steelers had? It's
3 ever.
Yeah,
in the Super Bowl era.
Yeah, that's nuts. That's pretty crazy. So. Look, one of the other things that is just as crazy if you live in the Virginia area is all of the jackpots you can score at Rosie's Gaming Casino. Now, today's show is brought to you by Rosie's Gaming Emporium. Rosie's paid out over $475 million in jackpots so far this year. Tons of winners. And look, starting in March, new members play for free at Rosie's. Sign up for Rosie's Rewards card and instantly receive $25 to $1,000 in free play. Go to rosiesgaming.com. Find out all about rewards and jackpot. That's rosiesgaming.com. They've also got Colonial Downs, which heats up in the summer. But if you're in the Virginia area, no better place to have a little bit of fun than Rosie's Gaming. I know if John were here, he'd be talking all the time about how amazing the sports book is. That's his favorite part about Rosie's. Says you walk in and the sports book is just nuts. So much fun. So crazy. So you go to rosiesgaming.com, sign up for a rewards card. And if you're in the area, stop by one of their gaming emporiums, one of their casinos, and have a little bit of fun. Should be always a lot of fun. And Rosie's, look, we love Rosie's here at Godzilla Wins. They are, I think they were our first sponsor, one of the first companies that really believed in what we're trying to do here and have been able to support some of our great contributors like Mitch and others on the show. So we want to thank Rosie's for helping us out to build out this platform. Been with us for a very long time as well. So look, Mitch, we're going to move on here to the Super Bowl. Now,
hold on one second. Poor Brock Purdy. We didn't even mention him.
Oh my God.
Poor Brock. Sorry to interrupt you. Let's move.
I mean, look, we could take 5 minutes because you're like a Brock Purdy fangirl over here. And I was just watching that game in anger with his stupid passes and the hitting guys in the helmet, then it bounces up and this guy is just I understand, Mitch, what you see in Brock. And maybe we'll just flip it. We'll start with the 49ers and maybe how they can win the Super Bowl. So we'll start with Brock, how they can't win the Super Bowl. I don't understand the love for this guy. He just looked like just the eye test. I understand the statistics and we can talk about, okay, well, maybe that's the scheme. I understand that he wins a lot, but like every time he throws a pass, I'm just like, oh my God, this looks like garbage. Like, and I don't care if it's a check down. It just, and then, I don't get it. I
How
know,
about
I know you love
how about
it.
his feet? You know what was amazing last week, and that was well coached too, because you could tell Shanahan saw that they weren't spying him at all, and if they got into man coverage, just told him to run.
Yeah.
But he did it with his feet too, which was that was very impressive. Just taking what the defense gave you, that scramble and that pass to Kyle Juszczyk. I mean, that's the one where it's not. That's the eye test one. That's where you go, oh, okay, and he can make all the throws, and when you have to rely on your quarterback to come back 27-3. It was very impressive, especially after my rant last week. You know, I was when he was down and he threw the pick, I was like, oh no, this isn't going to happen. But I mean, he played the way Lamar Jackson should have played, like picked his spots, ran when he needed to, and so I was impressed with his poise and being able to come back. But that scramble and that pass to Juszczyk for that first down was pretty spectacular, and that gives them a chance, you know, to use him, you know, for the rest. And think about that in the offseason, they told him if Tom Brady wanted to come in, he was going to sideline him and let him sit and learn from him for a year. So
Yeah.
it's like, what do they do here? I don't know enough about it. We might not. Is he up now to be able to renegotiate a contract? I think is it after year 3 you're able to get more money, or is he still going to be?
Yeah, I think he should be in the position this year after the year to do that. I'd have to check.
Because they're going to do that Seattle Seahawks thing right now too, right? Like, inexpensive quarterback, and they kind of need to be because they traded all their draft stock away for quarterback that they never used. So. But we were talking about how we didn't talk about Brock Purdy at all. Poor guy, poor guy leading the comeback, one of the greatest throws in history to his fullback.
Yeah, I mean that throw is incredible. I mean, I don't understand the love so much. I just don't. I just look at him and I think this is not a guy who's going to win you a Super Bowl. But I could be wrong. He's one game away. You cannot. Like Mitch was saying, and we'll talk about the 49ers' keys to victory here. We'll just flip them. We'll talk about the Chiefs afterwards. But you can't, if you're going to come back from a lot like a deficit like that, then you have to give a lot of credit to the quarterback because that's who orchestrates that. You can't turn the ball over when you're down 20-3. Like you just can't do it. Now he turned the ball over early, but he's able to protect the ball late. And that's not scheme. Like coming back from 17 points and then just putting up a ton of points. That's not scheme. I mean, it can't be. Like it's some of it's scheme, but it's also just leadership and the ability to all those intangibles that all the great quarterbacks have, where you think, man, this game's in the right hands here. But I don't know. I mean, people, Eli Manning orchestrated a lot of interesting comebacks, and everybody still thinks he kind of sucks. So
right, so did Tom Brady, and everyone thinks he's the greatest of all time. So
yeah,
I mean, he was a quote unquote game manager when he took over for Drew Bledsoe.
For about 10 years, he was a game manager. I mean, he wasn't really.
When he had Randy Moss, he was still a game manager. It was just like, oh, it's all Randy.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know, but we'll talk a little bit about the Niners here and just their keys to winning, how they can win the game. The spread is 2, so they're -2 over under 47.5. We'll talk a little bit more about the spread next week, but I just want to talk for a little bit. Like, you're a Niners fan, you're in the coaching room, whatever. Like, how do you win this game? How can the Niners win the Super Bowl here? How can they overcome this Chiefs specter on the NFL? Nate, we'll start with you.
Just do what they did all year, be healthy. I mean, the Niners really only lose when they're not like healthy, it seems like, when somebody's banged up. But if everybody's back, and if Debo's healthy, especially, he's been kind of the biggest question mark in the postseason with his health. But they just don't lose when they're healthy. Like if Debo's there, if Kittle's there, if McCaffrey's there, if Ayuk is there, there's just so many weapons on the field. It just overwhelms defenses. It's not possible. Like, it's just not possible to stop all of them. And Brock Purdy might not be an elite talent. Cam Newton is, unemployed Cam Newton is on TV every day calling him a game manager and saying that he stinks, and that, what he's doing, anybody could do in the NFL. That's not true. And it's pretty rich coming from Cam Newton.
Who also had McCaffrey. Come on.
Yeah, who also had McCaffrey and did. So I think this is the biggest key for them is just keep doing what they do. I mean, they've not they had a slow start last week, but they've just not really sort of wilted under the pressure. And Brock Purdy just doesn't really lose that much. It's just there's not a lot on his resume, in his young NFL career to suggest that like he's a choker. He played great when he came in last season, and he got injured, but that wasn't, that's not really his fault. That's just football. But I just don't see why people are so quick to sort of write him off, like completely and just say that it's all everyone else. I mean, it's the whole team. They're just too good. They're just really good.
Like, Mitch, I guess my question here is, I mean, we all know the Chiefs are the Chiefs, and we'll talk about how they can win the game in a minute. But I mean, is this the Niners' game to lose? Like, I mean, are they a heavy favorite? Should they win this game easily, or are they going to have to scheme their way into the Super Bowl?
I mean, it's a tough road for the Niners because it's a pick your poison. The Chiefs have become a running team, and the 49ers' weakness, if you will, they're allowing about 0.8 yards more than last year, is against the run. So they have to solidify and stop the run attack with their base 6 or 7 in the box. If you start putting the 8th man in the box and you start trying to do run blitzes or run stops, Mahomes will kill you. I mean, Mahomes, when there is a blitz and he has single coverage, is going to destroy you. So they got to be careful on defense. Their front four needs to stop the run. That's first and foremost. On offense, man, Trent Williams, God, former Redskin, he is the man. When he is out, they lose. When he's in, they win. And since he's been back, they have been undefeated or one loss. Christian McCaffrey, who I just mentioned, he is the one that he's like the ho-hum when you're rewatching ESPN highlights or anything. It's like, oh, Brock Purdy came back. Oh, this, and Christian McCaffrey had 2 touchdowns. I mean, it's just like you just say it just as a matter of fact, because it's going to happen. You're right. If they stay healthy, they have Deebo Samuels and Christian McCaffrey to do all the heavy lifting, and then let Brock Purdy come in and make the critical third down throws, and they'll be fine, and it's a close game. But I really do think it starts with stopping the run and not letting Mahomes play action you or have single coverage out there, because then that's when you're going to see Kelsey go 11 for 11, 120 yards and 1 touchdown in the first half. But my key is McCaffrey.
Yeah,
get McCaffrey going, and everything else will fall into place.
You're right about Trent Williams in the offensive line too. I mean, the Chiefs are going to blitz, and they're going to try to make Brock Purdy as uncomfortable as possible. We know that Purdy can make mistakes. We know he can throw interceptions. He's not one he's not going to throw 3. Like, he's not going to have a meltdown, but he can throw a pick. And I think the Chiefs are going to be relying a lot on that blitz. So the Niners are going to have to be able to pick up that blitz. Now, the problem with the blitz with the Niners, which for the Ravens is what they should have been doing, but what they can't do because they don't have as much talent, is you just check down. And I mean, if you send 2 guys and you get Purdy on his back feet, as long as he can dump it off to McCaffrey. Now McCaffrey has like room to just run everywhere. And he really is the key that, I mean, what they say schematically, Nate, I think what they always say is that even though Deebo Samuel's usage rate isn't as high as McCaffrey's, it's important that he's on the field. What they always say with Deebo and the Niners is that when Deebo's out there, their average, like their EPA just skyrockets because they have to account for 2. The defenses have to account for 2 of the most explosive players. When Deebo's hurt or hobbled or he's just out in a breather, all of a sudden the Niners are a lot easier to stop. Now, we all love McCaffrey, but we've also seen McCaffrey without all these weapons on Panthers teams that suck. So, I mean, he can do all the heavy lifting and you can still lose the football game. Much harder to lose, much easier to win when you have to account for both Deebo and McCaffrey. Now, Ayuk and Kittle, I mean, they're incredible as well. But just what they always say schematically with the Niners is keep Debo on the field. You don't have to give him the ball that much, but it just makes it so much harder to then cover McCaffrey. So Debo becomes a decoy. McCaffrey becomes the most important offensive weapon. And then you have to rely on Brock to make those third down throws. You're right about last week. He did that. And that's my question. Can he do that against the Chiefs in the biggest moment, Nate?
I mean, I think so. I mean, to speak on Debo, like, the thing that gets overlooked, because you look at his stat line and it just looks weird, but it's consistent. In his good games, he'll have, 5-6 carries for, 25, 30 yards or whatever. And then he'll have like 4 catches for like 125, and then he'll have 3 touchdowns somehow. He's just so efficient when he does touch the ball that it just scares the hell out of defenses, I think. I mean, it's going to be interesting. I think that, Spagnuolo made Lamar Jackson pretty confused in the AFC Championship game, and Lamar Jackson looked pretty good. I mean, I just don't see it. I don't see like that game plan working as well for Purdy, though. I mean, like Spagnuolo, really sort of dared Lamar to either just air it out long or just have to take the check down. And I think Brock Purdy will see through that. I think that Kyle Shanahan's just a much more dynamic sort of like in-game sort of manager and figuring out ways to get his guys to score than any of, than maybe any of the offenses in the NFL in terms of just being able to sort of figure it out on the fly and figure out what's working. Like Kyle Shanahan's unbelievable.
He can work the middle of the field. Like the middle of the field's open a lot. For him in ways that it's just not for Lamar because he doesn't have as much talent. And Monken is not Kyle Shanahan. It's just not the same. So like Spags versus Monken, Spags is probably going to win that schematically. Shanahan versus Spags, it's basically even. And it's just about who can make the most plays. And Brock, like to Mitch's point with the scramble and the throw, like Brock goes through all his progressions. That was not his first choice. And he looks to the middle of the field because he knows he's going to have Debo or Christian McCaffrey or the fullback. He knows or Kittle. He knows he's going to have all those guys. At someone, if he can keep the play alive, someone's going to get open. And if you send Ayuk deep, you clear some of that out. He just doesn't have the arm strength for the deep ball. And that's the thing. I mean, we saw that last week when he almost threw like a critical pick that ended up being, an amazing catch. It's just, he just doesn't have that. He's not Mahomes or Allen where he's going to throw like 50 yards down the field and it's just going to, hit the guy in the chest for a 75-yard touchdown. He just isn't that kind of quarterback. That's fine. There's not a lot of those quarterbacks out there. Mahomes is one of them. Allen is one of them. Lamar is one of them. But Purdy's not. And so the way for Purdy to be successful is for them to check down and to look at the middle of the field and just to clear everybody out deep by running some deep routes to get the safeties off the middle of the field and make the linebackers uncomfortable. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, they should be favored. They're a better team, I think, all around than the Chiefs. But the Chiefs are the Chiefs, man. We'll talk about that in a minute. They've got a lot of ways in which they can win as well, and they have a guy named Patrick Mahomes. But before we do that, we got to talk a little bit about Healthy Cell. Now, if you're listening to the show, I need you to go to healthycell.com right now. That's healthycell.com. You get some really amazing products here from Healthy Cell. We talk a lot about the REM sleep at the beginning of the show. Got to talk about REM sleep early on, Nate, when we're all up super early. Now we're awake. We don't need to talk about REM sleep as much, but what we do need to talk about is joint health and mobility. Man, do I love joint health and mobility. We talk a lot about their products there. What this helps do is it helps strengthen your joints, and it's in a more natural way than some other ways. Now, if you're like me and you like to work out and you put on a little bit of muscle, well, your joints are going to be strained a little bit. And there's some stuff you can do. I mean, I get in there and just strengthen the wrists and whatever else I'm supposed to do so that the joints aren't really hurting. But I used to rely too much on Tylenol and some of the anti-inflammatories because when those joints start to flare up, you get a little bit older, it doesn't go away. It's not like when I was like 23 and like all my joints started hurting, it was just like the next day everything was gone. Well, that's not the case anymore. And you don't want to rely. I mean, it's bad for your liver relying on all that all that anti-inflammatory, all that stuff right there. So you go to healthycell.com, you put in the promo code Godzilla, you get 20% off of joint health and mobility. That's my favorite product they have on the market because it really helps me just stay healthy, just keep my joints healthy so that I can stay as active as I want to, as I put a lot of strain on all my joints. I mean, I always got something going on with my elbows, my shoulders, my wrists. Thank God right now my knees, knock on wood, have been okay. But part of the reason is because Healthy Cell gives me that joint health and mobility. If my knees start clicking while I'm squatting, I mean, forget it. I'll be mainlining Healthy Cell joint health and mobility because once the knees start to go, you have to take time off. Which is pretty frustrating. So that's what I don't want to do. I want to stay in the gym. I want to stay healthy. I want to be able to lift, and I can do that with Healthy Cell's joint health and mobility. And I can do it for cheap with that 20% off. So go to healthycell.com, get your joint health and mobility, 20% off with promo code Godzilla. We got 10 minutes here. We want to talk about the Chiefs now, 2-point dog. We'll talk about the spread next week. I'll just say this. I'm not taking Mahomes as an underdog. Like, I'm not fading him ever again as an underdog. I just don't care anymore. I don't care who he's playing. I don't care what league he's playing in. He could be playing in Canada when he's 60 and be a 7-point underdog. I'm still taking him. The guy it's like the Spurs. You just, during the Duncan years or Brady, I mean, you just take them until they lose, and they just never lose. So, Nate, you're in the Chiefs locker room here. You're scheming for the week. How can the Chiefs pull off this victory and an improbable run to a second straight Super Bowl?
I mean, I think the path for the Chiefs is pretty simple. It's probably a little bit more straightforward in my mind than it is for the 49ers, because the Niners have a variety of ways they can win, right? The defense is pretty solid. The offense can be, electric at times. The Chiefs don't have that electric offense right now. I mean, yes, it's Mahomes. Yes, he moved. When they won last week, he moved to 10-1 against the spread in his career as an underdog. I mean, it's just ludicrous. But it's also a pretty flawed offensive team. I mean, the criticisms and the things we saw earlier in the season, those don't just go away. I mean, they won an ugly game against the Ravens. They scored 17 points. That's not a lot of points. So, I mean, I think that's real. I think that what it comes down to is they have to play an elite defensive game. I mean, Spagnuolo has to get after Brock Purdy, and he has to fluster him. They have to try and win the game in the trenches. And that's a tough ask against a pretty stout 49ers offensive line. But if anyone's going to be able to dial it up, it's Spagnuolo, who just seems to be just staring into opponents' souls right now. So I think that's really just that's how this happens. Is the defense shuts down Brock Purdy. He doesn't have time to sort of run through his progressions, and then they hope for the best, and they hope that Mahomes just does what Mahomes does. But the idea that the Chiefs are going to sit there and, could win a shootout with the 49ers, I think is pretty ridiculous. They're going to need to win a pretty ugly game, and it's got to go a pretty specific way, I think, for the Chiefs to win. I don't think the Chiefs win, 49-42 shootout against the 49ers. They only win if this is ugly.
Yeah, Mitch, talk about that a little bit, because you mentioned earlier the Chiefs this year, they're a running team. They want to control the clock. They have a great defense. If you're thinking about the Chiefs from 3 years ago or 4 years ago, then you think, well, all they do is outscore everybody. That's not the case anymore. They have a great defense. Spags is a terrific coordinator. But the Niners can play ball control too. So is this a situation where the Chiefs are going to have to rely on the run game and their defense? Or do you think that Andy Reid is smart enough to be like, look, maybe we can't beat the Chiefs at their own game. Maybe we need to let Mahomes air it out a bunch and just play a little bit faster?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Nate that the Chiefs kind of have it easier from a sense that they have a team identity, an offensive identity. They know what they want to do now. And the emergence of Rashee Rice at wide receiver, a guy that's not dropping balls, I mean, that has been as big of a key as Isaiah Pacheco really coming into his own at the running back position. They tried to see earlier this year if you could just have Mahomes and let him run around and win games. And they lost 3 in a row. So they had to get an identity. If it breaks down to that, and that's what you have to rely on, that's the best guy in the world to have it there, but that is not the key to success. So they have to establish that running game. But Andy Reid is amazing. So he will craft the proper offense if he sees that he has to go more to a passing game, and it's all going to be too how they cover Travis Kelce. So I mean, Travis Kelce and being the tight end in the middle of the field, do you bring in the nickel corner, or do you do a middle linebacker? Watch exploiting those matchups, seeing if you have a middle linebacker on him, and then switching the play to something there. But I think that with Rashee Rice, that has been the reason why they're here. And there's their third receiver. I don't even know his name. Jeff, what is this? Johnson? He went to him, I was like, I don't even know who that is. I didn't. Week 2, never even saw that guy. No, but you're right. It is weird to think of the Chiefs as a team that needs to dominate on defense in the trenches, and that's what they will need to do. And I think they can do it against this 49ers team that has, especially in the playoffs, they've given up a ton of yards. I think over 300 yards rushing in their 2 playoff games. So you try to run it as much as you can, third and shorts, and Mahomes will rip you apart if he has third and under 4, all day long, or second and short. So, but it's going to be an awesome game. But they do have a game plan, and they have the best guy that makes adjustments in Andy Reid if he has to. And I'll be interested to see Spag's defensive philosophy rolling into here. Because I think he's probably more in your boat, Jack. Like Brock Purdy's like, come on, this kid, we're gonna go see what he can do in Vegas, under the lights, with all this pressure on. And also, you're looking at Shanahan on the other side. He's got to be like, let's see what you do. You've been in pressure situations a bunch of times, and you've come up short as well. So we're going to put the pressure on you and make you make the right decisions. From a coaching standpoint, too, it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be a great matchup. But yeah, I can't wait to do the pick next week. Oh, but after I made my pick against Mahomes last week, Nate made his pick after mine and said never to fade Mahomes. And I listened to you and went against my pick.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
And I took the Niners 4.5.
Yeah, I'm tired of. I can't fade Mahomes anymore. I mean, you just can't. But one of the things,
to speak to that though, I was reading this Athletic article. It's like, the early picks or whatever. They had 10 staff writers write like their picks for the Super Bowl. Who wins, whatever, blah blah. 9 picked the Chiefs as an underdog to win the Super Bowl outright.
Yeah.
9-1. The writers for the Athletic are going Chiefs. Like that. Now it just feels like a trap.
Now they're
it's just so scary now to pick against them, because all they do is win. But the Niners are not the Bills, and they're not the Ravens, and they're just as capable of the Chiefs. If I'm Andy Reid, I'm looking at the first half, obviously, of the Lions game. The thing you got to love about the Chiefs, if I'm the Chiefs, the thing I love about this is we are so good at scoring first. We get down and we get in the end zone on the first drive every time. Kelce is incredibly hard to stop at the beginning of games. He's got all that energy, all that steam.
And that's Andy Reid scripting plays at the beginning too.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, right? So you get the first 2 drives are like all scripting with Reid, and it's hard for the Niners to stop that. Now they will adjust. I don't think this game is going to be 42-40, but I do think the Chiefs probably going to jump out pretty early, and they're not the Lions. They can hold a lead. They can do that on defense. They're comfortable playing those close games. They've been in this situation a lot, and I worry about Purdy, and I worry about Shanahan. I mean, as a Falcons fan, nobody worries about Shanahan more than I do when it comes to Super Bowl performance. So I wonder if that's going to play into it. It's definitely going to be a storyline here. But I think the Chiefs jump out to an early lead. Other than that, though, I think this is an ugly game. Maybe it's 10-7 by the first quarter. Chiefs are up, but I don't think this game, whatever the under is, I'm probably going to take it. I just think this is going to be a lot of defense, a lot of running. I think any Pacheco props you can take a Kelce anytime touchdown, take a Kelce first TD scorer. Those are good props. And we'll do a whole bunch of props for the Super Bowl. Those are always fun because there's all the fun ones that you can get on some of the books. But yeah, so should be a lot of fun here. We're going to come back next week, talk even more about the Super Bowl. We'll talk about the spread, some of storylines. John will be back, so I'm sure my dad will have plenty to say about the Chiefs and the Niners. Should be a lot of fun. We want to thank Mitch Rogers for joining us today. You can find all his writing on GodzillaWins.com, including his picks. If you like the NHL, he's going to start covering the Pittsburgh Penguins for us and some hockey. And maybe we'll get him in some college hoops as well when we get down to March Madness. I want to thank Mitch for joining us. I want to thank Dan for joining us a little bit earlier. We will be back next week, same time as always. This is the Godzilla Wins Saturday Pick Show. We're always here every Saturday to give you the best sports predictions and analysis and picks. Go to GodzillaWins.com and look at our daily picks for all of our picks for the week. Up